Hi and welcome back. In this video, I want to cover routing within FL Studio and show you how it will make your project more dynamic. When we talk about routing, we're talking about taking the audio generated by a channel or coming from a mixer track and sending that audio to a different location. There are many benefits to routing which we'll see shortly. In the hardware world, routing is done through patch bays or outputs and inputs on a piece of equipment. A simple example of routing is using an effects pedal on a guitar. I would usually plug the guitar into an amp, but if I want to add some effects to it, I would put an effects pedal between the guitar and the amp. So we would have what's known as a chain. The output of the guitar itself would have a cord going to the input of the effects pedal. Then, the output of the effects pedal would have a cord going into the input of the amplifier. This chain would then have the guitar signal being sent into an effects pedal, and then into an amplifier, and then being outputted by the amp. I wanted to use this simple example to help better explain a chain so that you can form a concrete example in your mind, as we'll be discussing this on a digital level. The most basic form of routing in FL Studio is when you assign a mixer track to a channel. When you assign a mixer track, you're telling the program that you want the channel not to go straight to the output, but to route through a mixer track and then to go to the output. This way, any effects you add or changes you make to that mixer track will affect the channel assigned to it. Now we also have routing through the 4 send tracks. A send track is a track specially reserved in FL Studio to put effects on and then send those effects to other tracks. You don't actually assign a channel to a send track, rather you assign the send track to other mixer tracks. The way it works is like this. You can place an effect on send track 1, in this case a delay, and then you can select any of the other mixer tracks. Once you've selected another mixer track, you can then turn the knob under send track 1 to send the effect to that mixer track. Adjusting this knob affects the amount of the effect. The reason for this is when you put an effect on a mixer track, the audio feeds through the effect and then the wet signal is outputted. This is called an insert effect. This means that we have inserted the effect into the chain between the mixer track and the output. But a send effect allows the dry signal to come through as well as the effect. This is why we have a knob to control the amount of send. Another major benefit to a send track is that it cuts down on resource usage by allowing you to use common effects like reverb or delay, and then send this effect to many different channels. A good practice would be to set up send track 1 with reverb and send track 2 with delay, so that way they are both on hand to use in your project without having to insert a delay and reverb for each channel. You would activate each of the 4 send tracks the same way, which is by adjusting the knob for the appropriate send while the mixer track you want the effect sent to is selected. Send tracks are invaluable to your project in that they will save you time and CPU while still allowing you to have effects when you need them. Remember, you have up to 8 slots to place effects on each send track, so you can build chains of effects on them like you would any normal track. Now, even though we only have 4 dedicated send tracks, you can actually have many more by using the routing switches under each mixer track. The way this works is simple. While you have a mixer track selected, find a track that you want to route the audio to, and then at the bottom, hover over the little icon above the effects icon. Look in the hint bar and you will see it says Route Track 5 to Track 6. If you left-click this, the output from track 5 is now running through track 6 and then to the output. So any effects or changes made to track 6 will also affect track 5's audio signal. You may need to adjust the level of the original track or the send amount, as this can raise the volume of your signal. To do this, simply select track 5 and you'll see a knob under track 6. This controls the amount of signal sent to track 6. There is a way around the volume issue, however, as you can turn off track 5 from being sent to the master output at the same time. To do this, just left-click the routing icon under the master track while track 5 is highlighted. This will stop track 5 from sending any audio to the master track, but track 6 will still receive and deliver the audio as expected. So you can see that you can route different tracks around using this method. This is also useful if you wanted to create groups of instruments. To do this, you could route all drums or all synths, for example, to a track, turn off the master send for each one, and you'll be left with a single master fader for that group. This is useful for applying effects like compression to a large group of tracks without putting compression on each one, or for volume or panning effects on groups. I mentioned in an earlier tutorial about some channels requiring specific routing. As we saw, automation clips require that the channel panning knob be turned to the left and the channel volume knob be turned to the right. This is because we also saw that on an automation clip channel, these knobs are actually the minimum and maximum values. But when routing using the mixer, some effects need to be panned hard left and hard right as well. An example of this is the vocoder. Without going into detail, the vocoder requires two main inputs to produce the robot-sounding voice effect. These inputs are a modulator and a carrier. The carrier is the tone or sound that the vocoder uses to make the robot sound. The modulator is the input or the actual voice that is being changed to sound robotic. When setting up the vocoder, you need 3 mixer tracks, one for the modulator, one for the carrier, and one for the vocoder itself. You can place these anywhere you want on the mixer, but the key to making it all work is to have both the modulator and the carrier tracks route to the track with the vocoder on it. Then, make sure that the carrier is panned hard right and the modulator is panned hard left. This is because the vocoder actually reads from the left channel to get the modulator and the right channel to get the carrier in order to work, so you will need to use this specific routing and panning scheme to get sound out of it. Again, you can place each of these elements wherever you want in the mixer, but make sure you have both the carrier and the modulator routed to the track with the vocoder, and then pan each correctly. You would also want to turn off the routing to the master track on both the carrier and the modulator. Otherwise, you'll hear the vocoder sound, but also the dry sound, which would ruin the effect. Once you've routed everything correctly, you can adjust the levels of the carrier and modulator from the vocoder interface. I would leave both of these down completely, again, to make sure you're getting just the vocoder sound and none of the dry sound from the original source. So we've just seen how routing can offer us ways to not only save CPU, but also create groups of instruments and save time and space. We've also seen how sometimes routing is essential for plugins or effects to work. The vocoder is a special case, and this type of routing is not usually essential to making things work, but again, pay attention to the specific needs of your effects in your project. I hope that you were able to gain some insight into routing, and I hope that it will lead you to work more efficiently and effectively in the future. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.